Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you prove stuff is definitely write down that given. And you also want to mark anything they write. So we note that these sides are parallel. We note that I is the midpoint of HK so that these lines are going to be, those segments are going to be congruent. We're going to have a step in our proof that says that. And they tell us that GH is congruent to GI. And so whenever they tell us, and we want to prove that those angles are congruent. So usually if you want to prove, most of our proofs are triangle proofs, so you want to prove your triangles are congruent first by either side, 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 angle, side, angle, or angle, angle, side. And then once we prove that the triangles are congruent, then we prove their pieces are congruent by CPCTC. That's our plan of attack. And so we notice here that we already have a set of sides here and another set of sides here. And then every time they tell us, every time they tell us something about parallel lines, we know we have bunches of angles that are congruent. And in this case, we've got this set of corresponding angles that are congruent. So that's going to be our plan of attack, because now we have these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. And we need to state that all out explicitly in our statements and reasons. So here's one side being congruent because they simply told us so, it was given. And here's another side being congruent because that's what it means to be a midpoint, is that it divides it into two congruent segments. So every time you have a midpoint in your given, you're going to have a definition of midpoint there. And then here's your angle because they're corresponding angles. And then they're in the order side, angle, side, because the angle's included between those two sides. And then once the triangles are congruent, the corresponding parts are congruent. So corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. So now that you know that these triangles are congruent, all their pieces are congruent, including the ones that they wanted, G and J. So there you have it.